Let's press some buttons here on First Attack. So you finally start playing a fighting game. And as soon as you get into it, round one, fight, and what do? I mean, with so many fighting games, right from the very beginning of a round, you have so many moves available to you. So how do you know which moves to use and when? I mean, literally, a game like Street Fighter comes with 6 buttons. So like right away, you have at least, over a dozen things that you can do between jumping, crouching, and standing. So how do you approach figuring out what each of your moves do? Well, one of the easiest ways to categorize moves and to start kind of viewing their use is actually built into a lot of the games. Because so many fighting games already adopt this philosophy of categorization, it's easy to adopt this idea of having lights, mediums, and heavy attacks. And again, so many fighting games start out this way. Blaze Blue and Dragon Ball FighterZ literally just have light, medium, and heavy attack buttons. In Street Fighter, for example, you have 2 light buttons, 2 medium buttons, and 2 heavy buttons. And so why not just go with this idea that the fighting game already gives you? And even in games like Tekken or Mortal Kombat, where their buttons aren't representative of lights, mediums, and heavies, like Tekken has a button for each limb, for example, the concept still exists. It turns out that this idea of having light, medium, and heavy attacks, invented way back in Street Fighter 1 before they even knew what they were doing, ended up being super fundamental to how fighting games play. And it works out because lights, mediums, and heavies kind of ended up creating this rock, paper, scissors concept based off of very, very universal properties associated with them. All right, so what exactly makes the difference between a light, medium, and a heavy attack? Well, if you look at 3 specific properties, the speed of a move, the range of a move, and the damage of a move, most fighting games universally adhere to a standard. Light attacks will always be fast, but have very little range and very little damage. Heavy attacks will have good range and good damage, but they're going to be very slow. And mediums are going to be obviously right in between. So if you look at it like a sliding scale with light attacks over here and heavy attacks over here, you can kind of just imagine that damage starts low and goes to high. Range goes from short and then goes to long. But speed goes from very fast to much slower. And the sliding scale is important because you're basically never going to find a move in a fighting game that has all 3 things. You're not going to find a move that's fast, does a lot of damage, and has great range all at the same time. Because if that move exists in a fighting game, it's broken. It's too good of a move. The only way a move like that can exist is if it comes with its own downsides. For example, it costs resources to use, or it's horribly unsafe on block and the opponent can put you in a world of hurt if they defend against it. So pretty much you want to think of the strengths and weaknesses of lights, mediums, and heavies in that way. And as I mentioned earlier, this kind of creates this rock, paper, scissors where your fast attacks, if you can get up close to the opponent, you'll beat all of their slower, heavier attacks. However, if your opponent is pestering you with a bunch of light attacks, you're going to try to want to build a little bit of distance from your opponent. Remember, I talked about how fighting games are all about the distance between you and your opponent. Once you build a little distance, your medium attacks are going to outrange a lot of their light attacks. Of course, if the opponent is using a lot of these medium attacks, you can go even further away and start using your heavy attacks and start beating a lot of their medium attacks. Now, obviously, we can't just keep extending this over and over and over again, so that's why it kind of wraps back around. Once your opponent is good at keeping you away with these heavy attacks, that's why you want to get in close and start pestering with these light attacks. Now, a lot of this is very, very much oversimplification of what a fighting game is. But understanding this fundamental concept is important because it helps you start understanding how to use your moves in a fight. Because if you walk in with a blank slate and have no idea what button to press, well, then you're not going to find any success. Many of us have gone to a fighting game and the first thing we do is just start hitting heavy buttons because they do a ton of damage and they have a lot more range. So keep the guy away and swing. You know, you're just basically swinging at them with haymakers all day. For example, when I first got Street Fighter 2 on the Super Nintendo, I literally assigned my light buttons to the shoulders because I figured I wouldn't use lights ever, so put them in the, awkward button place and leave all the big buttons easy to press, And of course, this turned out to be a noob thought process, and as you play fighting games, you start learning that all three strengths are very, very important because of that interplay that I mentioned earlier. I've intentionally left out a lot of other properties of attacks out there. For example, there are some moves that you have to crouch block, or some moves you have to stand block, or some moves are horribly unsafe when they're blocked, or they'll have armor or invincibility. They can be canceled into other moves, etc., etc. These are higher level concepts that you will come into as you keep playing the game, but one of the things about fighting games is you want to start small and then learn as you go. If you jump right in trying to learn everything about moves right from the get-go, it's going to be too much information and it's going to be overwhelming. So stick right now, as a beginner, to the concept of lights, mediums, and heavies. So obviously we're starting very simple here. And the reason why I want to start with this idea of lights, mediums, and heavies is because, and this is a J. Chenzor axiom here, the interplay between lights, mediums, and heavies is going to form the fundamental basis of a lot of how you're going to play fighting games. And so this is a very important concept to learn. Learning to switch between the different speeds and the different ranges is going to improve your play drastically, almost instantaneously. So look for the playlist in the description below of all the First Attack videos, and look for the video entitled Pet Moves. That video will really hammer home why I want you to understand lights, mediums, and heavies at a very beginner level. And if you really enjoyed this video or you found this helpful, please leave a comment below, like and subscribe, and let's keep growing as a fighting game player. So thank you for watching, and remember, you can't KO your opponent without your first attack. Take care.